Welcome to episode 8 of our 9-episode docuseries, Money Revealed. So as you can see, we're on 8, which means we're coming to a close. This information, the feedback we've been getting, it's been awesome. So thank you for that, and thank you for taking the journey with me. Also remember, right now, during the free viewing period, we're offering a deep discount on owning this wisdom called Money Revealed. So I encourage you to make that investment, own this information. Just find the package that's right for you and order that package, and we'll be so happy to fulfill that order. So here we go. We're in episode 8. Let's dive in. Ryan Levesque is a legend in the internet marketing world. He's the best-selling author of the book Ask, and this book revolutionized how digital marketers approach their businesses. Now he's got a new book out called Choose. And you should not start a business until you read this book, or at least watch this interview and read this book. And if you're in business now, this interview is something that's going to help set you up for greater success moving forward. Enjoy this interview with Ryan Levesque. Ryan, thanks so much for being here. It's good to be here with you today. Tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So we have a company where we teach entrepreneurs how to launch and grow their business. And it's based on my own personal experience launching businesses in 23 different markets. So we have a best-selling book that's called Ask, a book that's called Choose that helps you identify what market you should go into and how to start the right business for you.
Perfect. So tell me, were you born an entrepreneur, or how'd you come to this?
I definitely was not born an entrepreneur. In fact, I tell people I'm one of the most risk-averse entrepreneurs that you're ever going to meet. After college, I grew up, my dad worked for the government. He worked nights, he was a shipping clerk. My mom was cutting hair in the basement of our house, so I grew up very blue collar. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I was fortunate enough to get into an Ivy League school, and I studied neuroscience. So my parents thought I was gonna go on to become a doctor, which was like the safest path that you could follow. I decided to go into finance instead. After college, I worked on Wall Street for the investment bank Goldman Sachs, and then I eventually made my way to China. And I started working for the financial services company, AIG. And I was opening up offices for AIG across China. I was living out of hotels. I was on an airplane every single week, and I was burnt out. I was in my mid-20s, and I had what I call a quarter-life crisis. I said, there has to be a better way. My wife and I were married, but we had this bi-country marriage. She was in grad school in Hong Kong. I was based out of Shanghai. We'd see each other once or twice a month. And I said, I want to do something different. And it led me to this path of building a business so I could live life on my own terms. I told people, listen, I don't want to live my life in a box, traveling in a box, to work in a box. I want to be able to build something that gives me freedom, gives me the ability to make an impact, and someday leave a legacy.
So I'm assuming it was smooth sailing once you made that decision, right?
The first business that we launched ended up being a complete failure. And it's one of the lessons I teach entrepreneurs that I work with, and it's the importance of not going into a fad market. So the first business that we started was in the tiny, obscure market of teaching people how to make scrabble tile jewelry. So my wife, at the time, this is 2007, 2008, stumbled upon a website which was brand new at the time, a website called Etsy.com. If you're not familiar, it's a site that's like eBay for handmade goods. And at the time, it was a brand new site. And she stumbled on this jewelry that was selling like crazy that involved using scrabble tiles and origami paper. And she said, hey, honey, we can do this. We're in China. There's all the origami paper that you could want in the world. We have access to inexpensive labor. Let's manufacture this jewelry and let's import it into the United States. And I said, honey, I don't want to do that. That's going to tie us to a factory in southern China. We want a location-independent business. We want to be able to travel and live life on our own terms. So she said, okay, put it to bed. A few weeks later, she reaches out to me again and she says, look, remember that scrabble tile jewelry thing? I said, I thought we closed the door on that thing. She says, no, time out. There's this woman. She's not selling the jewelry. She's teaching people how to make the jewelry. And the cool thing about Etsy is that you can look at a person's sales history. So you can see how many sales someone's making every single day. And we did the math, and she was selling this tutorial for $25, and she was making 20 to 30 sales a day. We did the math. I said, that's like $15,000 a month. And it's all profit. She's just selling this PDF. Like, we can do this. And so we bought her product. It wasn't terribly good. We said, we can build a better mousetrap. We built our own tutorial. My wife learned how to make the jewelry. We took photographs. We did the text. We started selling it. First month, we made $1,000, $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, $9,000 a month. We said, we're gonna be rich. Like this is great. This is gonna do great. And it wasn't that much longer after that the worldwide Scrabble tile jewelry market crashed. It turns out the whole thing was just a fad. People stopped buying the jewelry, so everyone selling the jewelry wasn't making any money. People stopped buying tutorials on how to make the jewelry, and before we knew it, we were basically broke. I'd quit my job. My wife was in grad school. We're living in a 400 square foot apartment, and we had that moment where we looked at each other and we said, now what? What do we do now? And we decided to move back to the States and start over. Mid-20s, late 20s at this point. We had 2 suitcases. We moved to Brownsville, Texas, the poorest zip code in the country, about a mile away from the Mexican border, which is where my wife grew up, where she was from, so we wanted to be close to her parents. And we started over. We started our first real business that did go on to become successful. So I know what it's like having those ramen noodle and bologna sandwich days. I know what it's like on a $50 a week food budget. I know what it's like having bars on the windows and a mattress on the floor. I know what those days are like. And I find that's one of the things that holds people back from going after it. People want to know, do you have to give up good in order to go for great?
So it's obvious after hearing that story why you would write a book called Choose, but we'll get to that in a second. From the time I've known you and heard you speak, a part of your depth comes from a significant health challenge that I think also colors your perspective. Tell us about that, because I want the people who hear you to understand, like I do, that this is a deep well that we're dipping into, not a shallow well.
So after we launched that Scrabble tile jewelry business and it was a failure, we moved back to the States and I launched my first real business that became successful, which was in a random obscure market, teaching people how to care for their orchids, as in the flower. And we took that business from nothing to $25,000 a month in 18 months. My wife quit the job that she was working at the time. We go all in, take that business to $500,000 a year. But I thought it was a fluke. Like I thought it was just I was so scared that the same thing was gonna happen again. So I decided to diversify into another market. To make my parents happy that I was actually using my education from college, we went into the how to improve your memory market. So we started teaching people memory techniques. So we went into that business, took that to $500,000 a year. Well, before I know it, I was going into market after market. I went to 23 different markets, which is crazy. And at that time, my first son was born. And right now, you see me on camera right now, I'm about 185 pounds, 190 pounds, in pretty good shape. But after my son was born, I started mysteriously losing weight. Again, I'm running these 23 different businesses. I'm a new dad, I'm losing all this weight, and I'm tired all the time. At the time, I just chalked it up to being a new dad and trying to run a fast-growing company. But my wife insisted that I apply for life insurance. She said, you're responsible for someone else's life now. Apply for life insurance. So I did. Apply for life insurance, and I go away on a trip, come back, and there's a letter waiting for me on my desk, and it's from the life insurance company. I open up the letter, and the letter says, denied. I just turned 30 years old. Denied life insurance. Now, if you're denied life insurance, typically it means something serious is going on. So I call up the life insurance agent, and if you apply for life insurance, you know that they do a medical exam. I didn't have the results of that exam, but the agent did. So I talked to him, and he said, I'm not a doctor, but I think you want to sit down. He proceeded to give me the numbers from my lab results, and I wrote them down. And then I tell people I made the biggest mistake of my life. I went to Google. I went to Google to find out what they meant. And I typed in my numbers into Google, and they came back, kidney failure, renal system shutdown, and pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is like a death sentence. And so I'm freaking out. And I remember that night my wife asked me, she said, I saw we got the life insurance letter, is everything okay? And I said, well, not exactly, we need to talk. So she starts breaking down and schedules a doctor's appointment the very next morning. Now at this point, I was in denial. I thought that they had messed up my results with somebody else. I thought somehow the results got swapped. So we go to the doctor the next day and they draw blood. They do some lab results. They say, we're gonna order this stat, hang tight in the waiting room. We'll order this right now. And I remember when the doctor came back out in the waiting room, he comes to me, grabs me by the shoulders, and he says, Mr. Levesque, you should be in a coma right now. We're taking you to the emergency room. So they rushed me to the ER, spend 10 days in ICU, in intensive care. I've got a 6-month-old baby at home. I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to die. And it turns out I was an undiagnosed juvenile diabetic. I had type 1 diabetes, and I was one of these guys in my 20s. I never went to go see a doctor. I lived in China for 5 years. I never saw a doctor when I was living in China. So I'd just gone undiagnosed all these years, and my body had reached a point where it was shutting down. And so I emerged from that experience, and I said, if I want to do something with my life, right? If I want to do something with my life, now's the time to do it.